Madam President, I come to the floor today to continue a conversation, a dialogue about the importance of moving forward on the motion to proceed on the Justice Act. Madam President, it was just an hour and a half ago when Leader McConnell, in front of the entire press corps, myself and the leadership team on the Republican side, had a very open conversation with the press about the fact that voting for this motion to proceed is voting for an open process. He said, and I agree, that this process must be open. I've asked that we have amendments, and the leader said yes. So to my friends on the other side who believe that somehow, some way that this process does not include an actual open process where you have a chance over several days in the sight of the public, talk about and offer your amendments, that is wrong. If you want a process where you have an opportunity to persuade those in this body and the American people about the value of your amendments, this motion to proceed is a motion you should vote for. But more important than persuading the American people that this is a motion to proceed that you should vote for, if you really want to get into police reform, we need a vehicle to get there. The Justice Act is that vehicle. Speaker Pelosi herself, and I'm not often quoting Speaker Pelosi or even paraphrasing Speaker Pelosi about something that she and I might agree on, but I agree here that it would be important for us to have a conference which requires this body to pass legislation that goes to a conference with the House. The only way we pass legislation in this body is for there to be a bipartisan coalition of Republicans and Democrats working together, because a majority in the Senate is not 51 out of 100. From a legislative purpose, the majority in the Senate is 60 votes. And that means we require 60 votes for us to even start the process of saying to little boys and girls in communities of color around this country, we see you, we hear you. I grew up in some impoverished communities, in a single-parent household, mired in poverty. I understand how it feels to leave your home and get in a car and be afraid of being stopped. I get that. I've spoken about that too many times already. But what I will say is that this body has a chance to say to those kids, we see you. We hear your concerns. And a motion to proceed is simply a procedural motion that simply says, let's debate the underlying bill. Let's have a conversation in front of all of the American people about the importance of doing police reform the right way. And if you don't trust Republicans or if you don't trust Democrats, you get to watch the process play out right here within the world's greatest deliberative body. Right here. You can watch it play out live on C-SPAN and come to your own conclusions about the seriousness of this issue. But if we miss that golden opportunity, if we miss the opportunity to debate the underlying issues, all you wind up with is talking points and campaigns. You see, some believe that one side would rather campaign on police reform than solve police issues. I believe that both sides of the aisle have a vast majority of people who are willing to come to the table to have a serious debate on the underlying issues that have brought combustion into this chamber and solve it. Not have it explode, because those of us in the sacred ground, we're all here now. All of us do not have to tackle the issues like I did when I was 16 and 17 and 18 and 25 and 26 and 30. We have the ability to say to that young man and to that young lady, we didn't just see you, we didn't just hear you, we acted on it. And by doing so, I believe, Madam President, that we can make a difference in the lives of Americans that we actually save. You know, there's been some criticisms. I sat in my office and listened to some of the criticisms about our Justice Act from my friends on the other side. And one of the criticisms was that the Justice Act does not require new reporting measures on use of force. What? I sat in my office speechless because, Madam President, our legislation absolutely, positively, unequivocally requires more information. And the House bill has a 10% penalty. Our legislation has a 20% penalty or twice the penalty. I heard that our legislation does not ban no-knock warrants, and this is critically important because in Louisville, Kentucky, the conversation around no-knock warrants took a drastic turn in the wrong direction that led to the killing of Breonna Taylor. And my friends were talking about how the House bill, their bill, bans no-knock warrants in drug cases. But when you open the legislation and read the pages, what it does is it bans no-knock warrants for federal agents. Louisville, Kentucky, those were not federal agents. So the complaint and the concerns about what actually helps situations in places like Louisville, Kentucky, isn't answered by the House bill. This is a chance for these two bodies, and I'll be honest, our legislation, we want to get the data around no-knock warrants so that we can actually direct the resources and the decisions in the right way. So yes, you can say ours takes a more deliberative process. Well, let's debate that. Let's come to an agreement. Next, you've heard, and I heard, that the Justice Act would not end chokeholds, and their legislation actually bans chokeholds. Well, let's take a closer look, Madam President. That's false. With strict penalties facing local police departments, they go after chokeholds by holding off on grant dollars for local agencies and state agencies. Our legislation does the exact same thing. We go after local departments and state agencies by withdrawing some grant dollars. What theirs says about the ban on chokeholds only applies to federal agents. That's really important. Why is that important? Well, because if you're watching at home, you hear a ban on chokeholds, but you don't necessarily have the correlation, the information to reach the conclusion that they're only talking about federal agents. Now, why is that important? Because Eric Garner was not an incident with a federal agent. It was not. So the conversation around banning chokeholds for federal agents is, let me say it differently. For 700,000 of the 800,000 law enforcement officers, the ban would not apply. That's really important information to share with the American people. Well, why is this so? Well, it's called the Constitution. It's a pesky little thing sometimes, but it's a fact. The Constitution does not allow for the federal government to dictate to local law enforcement what they can and cannot do. So they use the inducement of resources on the federal level. But I told my friends earlier today, I've talked to 10 Democrat senators today. I told them all the same. Let's get on the floor and amend the bill and see what happens. Because if you can't ban it, and by the way, our legislation says the same thing. We instruct the AG to figure out how to ban it for federal officers. And we reduce money and take money away as a penalty for those departments that have not banned chokeholds. And the president's executive order says that the certification process must include being certified by a governing agency that doesn't look favorably on chokeholds. So whether you're in the House, Senate Democrat, a Republican senator, or the White House, we are all closing in on the same outcome. Here's what may be just as important as the distinctions that I hope I've cleared up on the differences that are not necessarily the biggest differences on the important issues of what they said this morning was not what we were doing. I think selling something is important, but you can sell by manipulating or you can sell by motivating. I want to be clear that our legislation says what it says, not what others say it doesn't say. So why am I so passionate about this issue? Beyond my 18 stops as a person of color, beyond my issues here in the Senate, beyond the fact that I'm the one that grew up in poverty in a single parent household, beyond that point, because in my legislation, the Senate Republican legislation, and the House legislation, there is so much common ground that we can work from. And to lose this moment for the kids and the young adults watching this process would be terrible. Let me give you a couple of examples of what I mean, that things that we have in common. Both sides agree on more de-escalation training and the duty to intervene training. Both sides agree on ending chokeholds. Both sides agree on passing the anti-lynching legislation. Oh, by the way, that myself and Senator Grassley, the chairman then of the Judiciary Committee, worked with Senator Harris and Senator Booker to get it passed, not once in this chamber, but twice. It stalled in the House before it stalled over here. We got it done twice, another area of agreement. Both sides agree on the importance of more minority hiring in law enforcement. Both sides agree that more body-worn cameras are a good thing. We actually go further and have penalties for not having your body cameras on. But both sides agree. Both sides agree on the creation of a National Criminal Justice Commission, which, by the way, was the #1 recommendation of President Obama's 21st Century Policing Task Force. So why? Why can't both sides agree on a motion to proceed? If there's that much commonality in the underlying legislation, if we're all watching the same pictures that we have all found disgusting and unbelievable, why can't we agree to tackle the issues in a substantive way here on the floor of the world's greatest deliberative body? Because that's what we're supposed to do here. We debate the issues. I want the nation to see. I want the public to see. I want the world to see. I want all of America to see us debating this issue. Thank you, Madam President.